Thanks for joining us on our live stream service, where we have support from ARC Mechanical, Mitsubishi electric heat pump experts in eastern Vermont and western New Hampshire, installing efficient heat pumps that cool in summer and heat in winter to help maximize comfort and minimize a carbon footprint. ARCMECH.com.
Because saw these tree rings.
These like really, really narrow rings.
So narrow, he could barely see them.
Super, super narrow. Really, really small. That automatically tells you, like, wow,
Something bad happened here.
that tree was really stressed.
So he's going through the list of things that he knows can stress out a tree.
Droughts.
Maybe it didn't rain that much.
Insects can have it different.
Maybe the tree got attacked by beetles, or it was unusually cold.
Keep on going back to the drawing board to find out what is the signal in these tree rings.
Until he comes up with a theory.
Hurricanes.
Hurricanes.
But wouldn't a hurricane make a bad rain because it's bringing so much rain?
Well,
I mean, a hurricane, as you know, is pretty powerful.
yeah. According to Valerie, a hurricane just shreds a tree.
It doesn't just lose its needles, it can also lose its big branches, obviously.
But how would you prove that?
Turns out,
Noah
as in the government weather people,
has this data set.
it's just a big list of all the hurricanes that have happened in the Atlantic since 1851 that the government made by combing through old newspapers.
We compared that list.
To those years that he saw with very narrow rings,
And they matched.
Bingo.
In other words,
he was right. They were caused by hurricanes.
and Valerie says this match was exciting on a couple different levels. For one thing,
I don't think I'd heard about using tree rings to reconstruct hurricanes.
it just felt like a new way to use tree rings to understand the world. But also, it gave us new hurricane data, which we don't have a lot of.
There are so few of them, so it's hard to calculate how frequently they happen because you have so few
Data points,
data points exactly.
And what Grant realizes is he must be sitting on a lot more hurricane data points. Because his trees, the trees with the skinny rings that seem to represent hurricanes, they go back way further than the government data.
Correct. They go back another 150 years-ish to 1707.
So Grant's thinking he might be able to use his tree rings to almost double the amount of historical hurricane data we have for this part of the world. Problem is, he now needs something outside of the tree rings to prove that. And this is essentially the puzzle that he brings to Valerie and Marta at the bar.
How do I prove that this is hurricanes?
Marta
Marta Dominguez del Mas.
is like, it's funny you say that, because a lot of the shipwrecks I dive at wrecked because of hurricanes.
Entire fleets going down because of hurricanes.
So I just spit it out. I'm like, what if we linked the two?
Like, what if you put the tree ring data, where you have the skinny rings that you think are hurricanes, next to a big list of all the shipwrecks that happened for the last few hundred years? Would they match up?
Because if they do, we're seeing what?
Because if they do, it's like the shipwrecks and the tree rings are both showing us hurricanes.
It's like double reference. Huh. Got it.
So, okay, so they have this idea at the bar that night. Literally the next morning, they get together and start looking around for a list of all the shipwrecks that have happened in that part of the world. And fortunately,
There's a very good documentary record of the Spanish shipping trade from 1492 up until it ends around 1825. And when they would wreck, they would keep track of where they wrecked, when they wrecked, why they wrecked, whether it's pirates or hurricanes.
to get their hands on this list, they eliminate the shipwrecks they know were caused by something other than hurricanes, or that are in the wrong area, or that, were not in the right time of year. And then Grant takes that shipwreck spreadsheet and merges it with the tree ring spreadsheet, and
I kid you not, they're almost identical.
they match.
You see the exact same pattern when you compare the shipwreck years to hurricane years with the tree ring.
So it's like, okay, fat ring, no shipwrecks. Fat ring, no shipwrecks. Fat ring, no shipwrecks. Narrow ring, tons of shipwrecks.
And that was the moment where I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is working.
Wow. There's something so, satisfying about possibly catching an objective, possibly, an objective truth, an objective happening with these silent bystanders is just like a tree.
Yes.
It just feels harder to come by these days.
Yeah, you're spot on. That's what I really like about trees. You can't say the tree's saying this or the tree's saying that. You can see it right there in the wood. You can't make it up. It's right there. Trees don't lie.
Okay, and just so I am clear on what they are not lying about, I think what we've just learned is that the shipwreck data confirmed that Grant's skinny tree rings are in fact hurricanes, which means tree rings are now doubling the amount of hurricane data that we have.
Tripling.
So the hurricane data the government had at the beginning of all this went back to 1850, right? Then the tree rings extended it back to 1700, so they added like 150 years. But now the shipwrecks extended back even further, all the way to 1495.
Yeah, 150 to 450 years. Yeah.
Oh my god.
So these three tree ring scientists basically tripled all of the historical hurricane data that we had in the Caribbean just by like lining up these three different data sets. So after they gathered this data, they sent it off to the people who make the hurricane models that, you know, predict how hurricanes are going to develop in the future. So now those models can make better predictions, which could in turn, you know, save tons of money and lives.
That is so cool.
Very
Actually, we're still just at the beginning of the story. So our tree ring scientists, they sent off this data to the hurricane modelers, but they also kept it for themselves because they're scientists
Trying to wring that sponge dry and get as much science out of that as possible.
and they want to see what else can we notice here. Cut to a few months later.
I was staying in this really cheap hotel in Flagstaff in northern Arizona.
Valerie was actually on a research trip for a different tree ring project.
But I was feeling really under the weather. And so while I was staying in and getting bored out of my head because I couldn't go do fieldwork, I went to a coffee shop.
She's at the coffee shop
I ordered a coffee. I set myself at the window,
and she's like, I'm just going to work here.
pulled up the graph.
The graph of the 300 years of shipwrecks, which also kind of stand in for hurricanes. But anyway, she'd been toying around with it. She hadn't really found anything interesting in it yet. But then,
I went to grab my coffee, and when I went back
from the counter,
towards my laptop,
she noticed something in the graph that she hadn't seen when she was looking at it up close.
this dip
From 1645 to about 1715, where there were virtually no wrecks.
No wrecks. That feels not hurricaney.
Yeah, so like kind
Okay.
of like a grace period or something. Like it was like a 70 years of almost no hurricanes.
and once you see it, you can't unsee it.
All the weathermen between 1645 and 715 were like, back to you, Doc.
Yeah.
So she's just like, that's weird.
what is that period?
And the answer to that question, it does two things. It reveals the secret about the sun that you almost certainly did not learn in school.
Okay.
And it also shows how this moment, this 70-year stretch, this clear sky time of very few hurricanes, sort of shaped the world we live in today.
Hmm.
And we'll get to that after the break.
Radiolab is supported by BetterHelp, committed to helping clients with issues ranging from relationship challenges and goal setting to grief and depression. Learn